is the 7th of April. We're on a 7 cycle.
Which cycle?
Oh, we are recording. We are live. Check, check, and check. We are unmuted. All right.
Good to go. Okay, welcome to the newest episode of the Raw Take for CEOs. It is April 7th. Thanks for joining us. How are you, Steve?
I'm good. I'm good. It is April is spring ahead. We think about spring. Just Easter weekend was just here. Harkens back to all those comments from a year ago. And hey, we're going to be open back up.
Yeah,
by Easter rolls around. I don't know how many times I've heard people mention that from from Mr. Trump there. But yes, April here is going to be focused on startups here on the Raw Take for CEOs, and we're excited for that. We have a lot of customers that are startups. We've got a lot of customers that are operating businesses. But
yeah, we don't talk a lot about startups in much of our content, right? It's more focused on operating companies, and but startups do make up 50% of our customer portfolio, and so we've decided that April is going to be spring ahead for startups, and we're excited. We've got like 3 or 4 guest speakers over the course of the next few weeks. Obviously, you cannot be a startup without talking R&D tax credits, although there are some potential court rulings that are coming out that may put a little bit of the kibosh on R&D tax credits.
I'd say put a little bit of kibosh, but also probably puts a premium on having somebody walk you through the process.
Put more rigor around the testing and the qualifications too, right? Which, let's face it, probably not a bad thing for taxpayers. The other guest we're going to have is, startups go through this very quick evolution at times, product development, and then they have their anchor customer, and then they've got their second customer, and then before you know it, they're looking at 25 customers, and they're having that oh shit moment, like, how do I manage these customers? Customers have complaints, they have questions about how to use the system. And they're thinking to themselves, okay, do I put my salespeople and my marketing people to manage customers and customer success? Such a critical component of a company's functional needs.
Yeah, that goes for any company, whether you're a startup or an operating business, but I think it's particularly critical for the startups, especially hitting that kind of growth curve that you just talked about. You've found that product market fit, right? And it's that point in time where the founders can no longer be the ones wearing all the top level hats, right? And other people have to pick up the baton, have that customer success mindset.
I mean, even in our business where we were able to not just survive, but actually capture market during the pandemic, we actually found ourselves with some customer feedback like, hey, working with you guys, GrowthLab is like a black hole. I don't know who to go to. And, the irony is like, we're trying to develop different divisions within our company, whether you need accounting or you need bookkeeping, you need CFO, financial planning, tax. And the customers were coming back and saying, I don't know who to go to.
There's too many people.
Too many people in the kitchen. So we started working on developing a customer success role.
And so Jeff will be on this month as well, and he comes out more of like that tech dev startup mode, which I think will speak to a lot of startups, right? But it's important to think about it not just in terms of that, but in terms of growing and how do you take that next step and really deliver the customer that experience, because it's about the customer experience, whether it's in software or in people, it's about customer experience.
And of course, you can't be a startup or without thinking about formation, legal documents, cap tables, 409As, and so we'll be having founders. So we'll have a guest speaker from Shoebox, which will be exciting. Good partner of ours, and we enjoy working with them. And obviously, you do a lot more of the sort of foundational stuff, formation stuff for our startups. But I'm excited for them to be joining us. And lastly, you cannot be a startup or a lifestyle business or an entrepreneur without talking about business partners, initial management teams, founders, co-founders, and how that comes together. So that's actually going to be today's topic. We're going to talk about, before you actually get up to bat with a product development, scaling of product, acquiring customers, there's usually people behind the scenes. People are still the foundation of businesses. Granted, you can't really have a business without paying customers and products or services, but it really does come back down to the relationships and the people behind the scenes. So talk a little bit about our experiences as business partners. It is going to be about 7 years this year. It's been a long journey.
Yeah, and I think uniquely, you were just reading on last night from one of our customers who recently had a good event, and Alex Liebman over at Morning Brew, and he was writing about his experience, right, building Morning Brew.
Sort of his top five
things.
learnings, right?
And there's a piece that I put out back when we were getting started 4 or 5 years ago as a video on Business Now.
And I remember you were sweating bullets the night before.
I hadn't really done video before. Now here we are, just like screw it, we'll live stream.
Even we're going to script this for you. Things are going to be okay.
But we had kind of the top 5 things to think about, right? And took a little bit different angle, but 3 of the top 5, overlap, and so we'll talk about that and some of the things that we've seen with some of our customers and their journey with co-founders, business partners as well.
Yeah, and I would say at least the major learning I had, and it didn't come from meeting you, it actually came from a mentor and advisor. He said, for partners to really work, to make sense, it really has to be about 1 + 1 = 10. Because if it's just 1 + 1 = 2, then really what you're looking at is potentially an employee. And so that's always been a critical learning and a key to success in any partnership, because otherwise there's other feelings that end up happening. But we'll leave that for just a few minutes.
So 12 months ago, not only were we talking about the pandemic being over by Easter, but we're also talking about startups and how funding was going to run out. Right, what was going to happen in the pandemic with not just your operating businesses, right? People are not stopping going to restaurants, but what's going to happen with angel funding, venture funding, PE funding? And there was a little bit of a downturn, but we
dried up for about a week.
Yeah, dried up for about a week, right? And over the last 3 months, we've seen not just not dried up, but there's a lot of capital out there.
A lot of capital.
I mean, even in our own industry. There's been some transactions that were like, WTF?
How did that happen?
How did that happen?
Who's the analyst behind that valuation?
But I think
100 times RMR.
Right,
doesn't make sense.
You got to have funding out there to generate a strong entrepreneurial world environment. Have these startups get started, get those founding documents together, find the business partners, get the initial seed capital. Get that idea out there, get to the point where you are going to have customer success users and keep running. But let's just talk about a little bit about the kind of the economy right now and what the outlook is and some of the new stuff that we're looking at.
I mean, who was it? Jamie Dimon's his annual report to his shareholders, right? It's calling the U.S. economy the Goldilocks moment of the U.S. economy. I'll
be honest. I had to read it Goldilocks, what does he exactly mean? But I totally understand it from where I read under the line, but I tried to.
I think there's so much capital that has been pumped into the system from the U.S. government, and then most recently in January and February, and now with the talk of a $2-3 trillion, maybe $2 trillion infrastructure financing. And let's face it, the level of confidence, because confidence doesn't just come from sort of business activity and available financing. It also comes from those 2 shots in the arms that you've had in the last 3-4 weeks. You're fully vaccinated. I'm fully vaccinated. Our confidence level has changed. How we're even looking at our business, and we're not talking about going bar hopping, going to restaurants again. That's not even our focus right now, because there are others around us that are not fully vaccinated, and we still have to protect them. But our level of confidence just in our own business, the amount of marketing that we're pumping out, potential leads, our hiring, like just the amount of interviews that I have done in the last month or two, I can't even, I don't think I did that many all of last year.
Right.
So I think Jamie's spot on. And this is coming from, I was pretty damn draconian like last 12 months ago. Many of us pulled back on sold stock, sold shares. You and I probably didn't stop putting money into our 401ks, but it was always like one arm behind our back. Like, was this really going to be for real? Are we really going to get out of this? But let's face it, you get a vaccine in 12 months. Like, that's crazy. That was unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, his whole point is that there's going to be very fast, sustained growth, but there's not, the interest rates are not going to tick up as quickly, right? So there's an opportunity here, and that's going to happen because of the stimulus money, because of the infrastructure bill, because of monies that are being pumped to specific industries like restaurants, like venues, but also just in general, we have kind of
customers are
kicked
starting
the
to
can down the road in terms of like any kind of downturn.
There's pent up demand, no doubt. And let's face it, a lot of our customers, their accounts receivable are finally thawing out, right? Working capital is starting to get loosened up a bit, and banks are beginning to extend and willing to have that conversation around restructuring loans. But I mean, come on, 6 months ago, they were still in PPP hell, right? They couldn't even think about organic loans.
And B, they had to keep so much in reserves for potential bad loans going bad.
Oh, in the next 3 months, you're going to have tens of billions of dollars in bank reserves opening up again.
Yeah. Because
those loans didn't go bad. I was just having a conversation with more of a regional banker last week. I said, here's a company that has hundreds of thousands of dollars, and this is a small operating business, hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity cushion behind you, like you're crazy not to do this deal. Between PPP1, PPP2, never mind ERTCs, from last year, ERTC from this year, there's so much equity that is being built up and cleaning up that balance sheet. Like, you'd be a crazy banker not to finance this deal. So I agree with Jamie. There's going to be a lot of it. Now, with that said, you're right. Like, inflation will start creeping up. You're going to have asset bubbles. We are seeing it today. And in full disclosure, I do invest in cryptocurrency. Totally not an expert in it. It's more like just dumb money. But in the last 70 days, the total cryptocurrency as a basket, as a market, has gone from $1 trillion in market cap, which was kind of crazy anyways, right? Back in January and February, to $2 trillion. It is 2x in less than a quarter. Yeah, lot of volatility, but with a fear of inflation. Somebody told me it actually has propelled the market cap of gold. Or maybe that's right or wrong. I should have fact checked that before I said it. But and then let's not forget Coinbase, who's a startup darling for the last 5 years. They're going public in the next week or two. And I just read in the Wall Street Journal this week that their earnings in Q1 was higher than their earnings for all of 2020.
Wow. Yeah.
That's call it an asset bubble, call it a whole new asset class that could potentially create new innovation.
I think that's the point, right? Like, is that there's room for innovation, there's room for entrepreneurship, there's room for experimentation to happen here, both in the things like Coinbase, new asset classes, and just in the general economy. We are not going to see capital dry up.
So we'll switch topics from crypto shortly, but I still remember our first customer 3 years ago when he said, "Hey, I'm starting a new company and we're going to do this whole ICO thing." And I was like, "What the hell is an ICO?" It was like, "Oh, it's an initial coin offering." I was like, "Okay." And we're not going with Bitcoin, we're going with Ethereum. I was like, well, I know Bitcoin, I've heard of that. Ethereum, what? That was 3 years ago. And today it's like, I think my kids know what cryptocurrency is. My wife and I were driving, my kids are like, "You don't know what cryptocurrency is? You don't know what Bitcoin is?" Tesla uses Bitcoin. So anyways, enough of that. But that was when we talk about inflation creeping, that is a market, a asset class we definitely want to keep an eye on.
Even Walter's Kluwer is now like including some add-ins to their tax software that our team uses, CCH, for crypto.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll be interested to see how the IRS and the US government keeps up with that. So
Startups.
April startups. So let's talk about the foundation of a startup, the core partnership, initial management team that goes into a startup. Now, you and I have been doing this for almost 7 years. We've seen it all in 7 years, amazingly. We've seen successful partnerships. We've seen rewinds due to broken partnerships. We've seen companies that have pretty much closed shop because of broken partnerships. And we've also seen companies that were able to truly leverage that 1 + 1 = 10 type of partnership and has just totally killed it. They are on the same page. They're not stepping on each other's toes. They're focused on their big why. They're not focused on, they're not in a disagreement on the vision. They may disagree on the approach. You and I have had our disagreements, and we have disagreements almost every week. But I don't think you and I have ever deviated from what is the company about? What is the company's big why? That has always been core to our partnership DNA.
Yeah, and I think even if, like there's a lot of things that go into like finding a good partner, finding the right partner. Let's just talk about for a second about like where do most startups founders like find each other, right? Because what we'll talk about is like what should you look for in a partnership, in a co-founder relationship. But yes, so often it's like you're rubbing shoulders in a dorm room in another company where you have this side project that you're working on. Often it's two people that are doing similar things, two developers, right? Developing an app, right? And let's make this into a business. Let's build it, right? I think that can be a great thing, but also you need to ask yourself some questions. Who are the two people, the three people, the four people? It gets more complicated as you get more people around the table, right? You de-risk some things, but it also gets more complicated. But that's often how these come about, right? You get two people that are doing similar things and you start a business.
But one of the things I think is also important in a good partnership is having independent lives. So coming at this, and I think it was one thing that Alex did bring up in his learnings was like, you can't always be in each other's shit, right? You need that moment. So one of the things that we did early on, probably I would say because early on, like 5-6 years ago, we probably talked on Saturdays or on Sundays a lot. And it was always about business, focused on business. And we got to a point where like, hey, we really need that Saturday and Sunday to break away from the business. Have that independence from the daily grind. I actually think that's important. So I don't know whether coming from dorm rooms or having a prior relationship is a key to success, because you and I didn't know each other from a hole in a wall. I met you at a networking event and kind of pitched you this idea, and through that. We didn't jump to an operating agreement, because that's not what it's all about. The lawyers may be like, well, you need an operating agreement. It's like, yeah, the operating agreement, yes, you need that, but without a relationship and without a clear alignment on the vision, a clear agreement on the vision, who cares what the operating agreement says? The operating agreement is just going to tell you how you break up in a month or two, right?
Yeah, no, maybe I wasn't. I think it's kind of coming out of the dorm room. I think the risk for relationships, not an asset for relationships, because oftentimes you're not asking the types of things that what we want to talk about today is what should you be looking for, right? And if you just kind of stumble upon a business partner, make sure you're asking kind of the next step of questions, not just are we working together, but do we have like are we different types of thinkers, right? I think that's a big one. That's one that 5 years ago I put out there, and then it was, I think it was number one on my list and number one on Alex's list. Not that those are the only lists out there, but you got these two people that are looking at like, hey, we've built a business, and we built a business with a key other partner, business partner, co-founder. What is it that made that successful, right? And one of the things is that kind of that divergent ways of thinking. You can't both be the same type.
No, you can't. And I think it's important in healthy exercise is taking inventory of your strengths and your weaknesses and identifying the gaps in your business where you fit and your business partner fits, and making sure that, you know, what you're doing is truly a core competency need of the business. Otherwise, you can just go out and hire the function.
But as a startup, you can't go out and hire that function because you don't have the money, right?
True.
And I think so it's both important to be thinking differently for the relationship, but for the business as well, right? Because as founders, co-founders, you need to be the ones that are putting on all the hats, right? You're wearing 5 different hats. One person's fundraising, one person's building the product, and you could keep naming them, right? But when it comes down to, like, as we're talking about, the company grows, you get that to an inflection point. That's when you're going to have the capital, the resources, the need to be able to hire people for those different hats and be able to kind of pass those off. So both for the relationship as well as the business, you need to find that different way of thinking, different way of working.
And so I tend to be more the relationship guy, right? You tend to be more the nuts and bolts. To me, when we met, it was always like, hey, can we break bread? That's a good place to start. Can we have a beer together? We even talk about when we're hiring, it's just like, hey, can we go on a bus ride with this individual for more than like 2 stops, right? Can we actually spend 15, 20 minutes one-on-one? I think with business partners and co-founders and really tight management teams, I think Alex puts it well. It's like, it's not about the bus stops and the number of bus stops. It's actually, can you actually go on a damn road trip without going crazy, right? And it's true, right? We were able to go because we weren't flying places, we were driving, and, you know, can you spend that time without going crazy? Yeah. And I think that, you know, I think that's an important piece. At least for me, it's important because it's about the relationship. And yeah, I don't think like the capabilities and, you know, what you bring to the table, that's important too, right? But I think that piece, it's hard to tell, right? When you meet somebody, you know, what type of thinker are they? You know, are they more visionary? Are they more tactical? Are they executors? Are they strategy?
Yeah, I think one of the funny stories, Dan, from our early days related to this was there were a few of those kind of AI things that could integrate with Gmail. And they would kind of analyze your style of writing, and they would basically get your personality type out of what you put into email.
Yeah, right? They would plug into your email.
And there were a few of those out there. I'm sure there still are. But one of those, before we had our first company meeting after making one of our acquisitions, you know, we ran a little analysis, and it between Dan and myself, and we actually used it to talk to the new employees of the acquired business. And I think it was almost to the word, it was like, if Steve and Dan are holding a event together, Dan should be at the door welcoming people, and Steve should make sure everything goes well so they have a good experience. So it speaks to like the fact that you know, early days, even that became obvious. But
right.
I think another thing is
remember that
that was kind of number 2 and 3 on my list, and two maybe 3 on Alex's list, was about strategy, right? You need to be aligned about where you want to go with the business, whether that's build a lifestyle business, operating business, whether that's grow a scaling, you know, you want to raise $20 million so you can be exit for, you know, whatever you think you can exit for. You both need to be on the same page about where you want to go with the business, because otherwise you're going to get to a certain point and you're going to have divergent roads, right? And you can discuss and argue about and fight about whether you want to go in a Tesla or a Hyundai, but you know, you don't want to argue about whether you want to go down, you know, major highway 1 or major highway 2.
And it's interesting because, you know, I get it. In the beginning, you can come together and have the same vision, but even vision changes. Market forces sometimes force you to change your approach with customers and force you to change how you do what you do. I don't know how that, you and I somehow, in the first 2 or 3 years, I'm not sure we could have articulated who we've become today, but I also don't know how we could have, like thought about or like have a countermeasure to that, right? I mean, there are things that you get thrown from left field that 5-6 years ago, I don't know how you would have reacted to doing XYZ 5 years later.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing about going through this list, especially as we start out like startup month here on Raw Take for CEOs. Is these are things that we did not specifically, like some of them we did think about, right? Divergent thinking, right? Some of them we didn't think about, like we did not specifically say, hey, where do we want to be in 5 years? Does that align? And we didn't spend a day like making, but there are things I look back on. We both came out of places where we knew we wanted to build our own business, right? We did not want to, we're not against raising capital. There's certain instances that's required, but for us, we wanted to build a business that was built kind of organically through acquisitions that we could manage. And that's was something that, I look back on, and we are very much aligned in terms of kind of where we wanted macro go with the business. And so those are important things to think about in the early days, whether they're specific conversations or whether they are, just putting together business models, plans for the future. Another piece of it is how much time are you spending with the business? A lot of startups start off as a kind of side project, or one person's in on payroll and one person is not. You got to really think about if that's the right move, because that it really kind of puts weight more on one person and less on the other, both in terms of where is the company spending the money, but also where are the people spending their time and effort, right? They can lead to some imbalances that can show their ugly faces later down the road.
Right, and one of the biggest wedges in a partnership is the sense of remorse, right? So if you're not aligned both from effort, you're not aligned as, who's, even in our company, like, yes, there are titles here, and titles are needed for corporate governance, but titles shouldn't mean anything in the context of decision making, in the context of visionary, right, or vision development or execution. So the other big thing in partnerships, of course, is the operating agreements. You and I sort of got to learn about operating agreements through our own experience, and ultimately, as we've developed a corporation that has the intention to bring on more shareholders, as we think about, as we're approaching, I'm 45, you've approached the 40s, as we're thinking about the next 10, 15 years of our lives, we don't want to be the company that waited too late to build that succession planning. I think one of the things that we have made very clear is that exit for us is not selling the business. Exit for us, at least where we stand today, is to begin to build that bench. And I think partners have to be aligned with that, because that's a huge piece, right? There's a total value creation that's happened, wealth creation for one's family. And to think about it in two different spectrums, I'm going to plan out, I'm going to have succession planning is going to be my exit strategy versus I'm going to sell this thing to be an exit strategy, especially when we are 5 years apart. Like, we are in different places in our lives, in our families' lives. That of itself is important to have alignment around. And interestingly, at our age, we are thinking about what does exit planning look like for this business. Our goal is to maintain a team that can begin to take on some of our responsibilities from the corporate side, from the operation side, because, as I've said many times, my big why is to get closer with our customers. My big why is to continuously develop and mentor the team. I really don't want to be running payroll. I really don't want to be dealing with this complaint, that complaint. At some point, we want to begin to offload that. And that can only happen if both partners are aligned with the end game.
Yeah.
We're not looking for the Avengers blip here. So Anything else on your end? Oh, and the other big important thing is you both can't have the same facial hair. You gotta have, one's gotta have the mustache, one's gotta have the beard. I did chop my beard off this weekend. It was my kid's 13th birthday yesterday, so I wanted to surprise her with a daddy mustache.
How'd she react to that?
Very embarrassed. She's like, yeah, no, that's gotta go, Dad. But anyways,
We've been through all sorts of
it's amazing
facial hair over the course of the last 7 years
Oh, yeah.
here at GrowthLab.
Or last 12 months, you mean. And with that, I'm excited for April, entering Q2. A lot of things going on, a lot of confusion. I mean, around the employee retention tax credit and the PPP, a lot of, that's one thing we're working through. But I am excited for Q2 of this year. Excited for spring. It's finally getting warmer. So.
Yeah, things are a little more, feels a little more predictable. Somebody was just talking the other day, like we've all talked about what is the new normal. And I'm actually feeling that there is a little bit of the new normal starting to bud as we do get through. I guess Jamie's saying the same thing. Goldilocks moment, Goldilocks period. Like it is getting to a place where it looks like we can count on a few things, and so that to me is like a little bit of a new normal. I really resisted that, 6 months ago, right? This is not normal. This is not going to be normal. We got to get to another place before it's normal.
No, when you get both vaccines, it's humbling, right? It's a huge relief for many. So with that said, if you have any questions, feel free to email us, visit our website, and I would love to hear from you. If you want us to bring up different topics, we'd love to hear that from you. And on that note, thanks, Steve. Nice job.
Thanks.
See you next week.